Hello and welcome to Android Developers Backstage. I'm Tor and Romain from the Android Studio team.
I'm Romain Guy from the Android Toolkit team.
I'm Greg Baker from the Firebase Test Lab team.
And I'm Joe Baker-Malone from Android Studio team.
All right, I heard Android Studio twice. That means this is going to be a good episode. No offense. Well, that came out wrong.
Offense taken.
Tools. We're going to talk about tools again and integration with servers, which I guess is what you're both working on. So kind of let's start with the feature that we shipped last year, Crashlytics, because this year we've added Play Vitals. So Joe, can you sort of tell us more about the crash integration in the IDE?
Yeah, sure. So about a year and a half ago, we first integrated Crashlytics information into Android Studio. Now you can see crashes that are reported by your app through the Crashlytics backend within Studio. It gives you the opportunity to navigate easily from your crashes into the relevant code and see that information in one place while you're working. Now we've also integrated similar information from Play Vitals. So Play Vitals also has a mechanism for collecting crashes. If you haven't explicitly included Crashlytics in your app, which you should do if you haven't done, but if you haven't, you can see the crashes that are generated by your app in the real world, in Studio, same functionality as with Crash.
So the key thing is that with Play Vitals, you get that no matter what from the Play Store. You don't have to do anything to your app. Everyone with the Play Store app, they'll have Play Vitals feedback.
Yeah, anyone will see those crashes there.
But
so
in
Studio, is that what I find in the App Quality Insight tab? Because that's the tab. I always feel bad because I always remove it because I don't. I write demo and sample code for testing changes.
So that's what we have in that tab right now. There's Crashlytics crashes and Play Vitals crashes. In the future, hopefully other stuff too.
And that's why it's not called the Crashlytics window. We already knew there's Play Vitals coming, so let's not call it Crashlytics. And I guess even beyond those two, it's not just for crashes. It's potentially any insight about your app quality.
Not yet. I mean, it is so far just for crashes, but
right.
Keep.
I like the way you think about the future.
Yeah. So were there any other features added in this area beyond Play Vitals?
So we've been continuing to work on the Crashlytics integration as well. Some features that came after the initial release were exposing notes added within Crashlytics in Studio. You can add and see other people's notes there on each crash.
I like the joke Romain made at the Dev Summit last year about that. You called it what? Stories for Android Studio? Is that?
So our
like every social network has to have one.
When we were designing this, it ended up looking a lot like a chat app.
Of course.
And so Studio is done now. We have a chat app. But other than that, we also are working on some more stuff now. So Crashlytics has a new concept of crash variants. There can be multiple different types of different stack traces associated with one crash that are grouped together into one issue. Right now in the Crashlytics web UI, you can see those different stack traces. We're working on exposing that in Studio as well.
So if this is already available in the web UI, why would I want this in the IDE?
I mean, it's just convenient to be able to see everything in one place, is the main reason. It's also, the web UI doesn't allow you to click on a stack trace and see your code right there.
And it was also a leading question because this is going to basically get me into one of the most exciting features for me here. And that is the version control integration. So can you talk a bit about what that is?
Yeah, sure. So this is something that is available in Android Studio Canary versions. It's not in stable yet, but you can try it out if you want. So what we did was we added in AGP, so in your build, we added the ability for AGP to write out information about the current version of your code. So this is if you're using Git for version control. AGP will save away inside your app bundle the current version, the current commit that you're building at. and that will flow through the crash reporting mechanism backend and come back to Studio in AQI. And
for Romain, that is the App Quality Insights.
I got it.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
For the listener.
Yes.
And we'll use that to let you see the code in the state that it was when the crash happened. So if this is some past version of your app where the crash was generated, and then there have been more changes in the code since then, you should be able to see the code in the state it was when the crash actually happened.
And this is what's so exciting to me, is that this is something we can do without, like, we don't have access to your source code. The web UI doesn't have access to your source code, but in Studio we do. So in Studio, you can get that crash on line 100, and even though someone went and added a bunch of lines in between and the line numbers don't line up, well, in Studio now, with this thing enabled, you get the correct lines, which I think is just kind of amazing.
That is brilliant, because I've had to deal with platform bugs where chasing the right branch or the right commit can be very difficult, even when you have a full bug report. So doing this automatically, love it.
Yeah.
That alone, reason enough to use Iguana, I would say.
Sure. Actually, it's also available in Hedgehog, in Canary. So this is something that at this point you have to enable explicitly in AGP in order for that information to be generated.
You said it's available in Hedgehog?
In Canary.
But isn't Hedgehog beta at this point? So then the feature would have been turned off.
Hedgehog, old Canary version.
Oh, I see. Okay. Got it. Okay. Yeah, no, the general policy we have is that when we get to beta, all the features not slated for that release get turned off. So like they move on to the next Canary, which we also release at the same time. So Hedgehog goes to beta and Iguana Canary comes out, and that's where the feature lives on.
It is available in Canary versions of Studio.
That's right.
So you said that there's an opt-in. So what do I have to do in my Gradle file to turn that on?
I forgot.
It's a Gradle.properties thing you said, right?
So right now there is a property. I don't remember the specific property, but in Gradle.properties there is a property that you can enable. We're actually changing it. It's going to be something that's in your build.gradle. In the future, maybe enabled by default.
Is there a reason to not be enabled by default? Because it sounds like we are just adding information about your app in your own app. Like, that shouldn't matter, right?
Yes, it takes time.
Okay.
We have to run like git tag whatever.
So we don't run git. So it doesn't take that much time. It is very fast, but as any Android developer knows, the biggest issue is always build time. So even though we're not it doesn't invoke Git. It's just looking locally at what's there.
This is going to be one of those things that everyone should just go and turn on anyway, because the one day you need it, you'll be like, oh, I wish we had baked this into our app bundles in the past so I knew how to make sense of this crash.
Yeah, it is something that you have to do ahead of time. Like, you have to realize that you're going to want it in the future. And in the App Quality Insights window, we're going to have some, nudge there if we detect that you might want to enable it and haven't yet, so that in the future, your future self will thank you.
Right. The other feature I know that you were working on for a while in this area was to show the crashes when you visit a file. And I know there was some performance overhead with that, but is that something that is going to make a reappearance, or still thinking about it, or did we do it?
That is something that we have, and that we have had for a while in the gutter on the left side of the editor. There will be little icons there indicating that some line is a line where a crash happened. It shows up in the stack trace. We're actually also leveraging the version control information to update those lines.
So you're figuring out that historically this was a line 100, but it's 130 now, and we're going to show the gutter icon there.
Yeah.
You should have a heat map, and then git blame can take on a very different meaning from there on.
Yeah, especially if it's a hit map, not a heat map. Yeah. Okay. Anything else sort of related to crashes?
Well, so just one quick question. So you mentioned there's the Play Vital crashes and the Crashlytics crashes. You said that folks should use Crashlytics. So what are the main differences? What does that mean that Play Vital doesn't give you the same amount of information? Why should I care?
Yeah, actually, so thank you for reminding me, perhaps involuntarily, that there is more new stuff coming for the Crashlytics integration. So Crashlytics, since it is something that you add to your app, you get some more control over what information is saved there. So in Crashlytics, you can say that at certain points, at certain times in your app, you want to log some more information. When a crash is generated, you can add your own custom information into the crash report. And that information, the logs and the key value pairs that you can add when a crash is generated, starting in Iguana, we're going to be exposing that in Studio as well.
Yes.
So the logs especially are interesting to me because they sort of can give you some breadcrumbs for the path that the user took to get to a crash. And then we've heard from users a lot that the key value pairs are very useful for narrowing down the kinds of situations, like what features of a phone or what locale the user has selected or something like that.
So that's not recorded by default by Crashlytics?
It is not recorded by default for Crashlytics, as far as I know.
Well, there might also be pieces of state that are specific to your app that Crashlytics will not know about.
Yeah.
And I imagine you use the key value pairs to figure that out.
The one benefit of the Vitals integration is that since it's running at the system level, it can catch some crashes that Crashlytics can't.
Like native crashes, I imagine?
Native crashes. Crashlytics does let you see native crashes sometimes. From users, we've heard that they almost always use the Vitals UI to look at native crashes instead of the Crashlytics UI. But if your app crashes at startup before the Crashlytics library has been initialized, it won't be able to catch that.
So the answer is that you should use both.
You should use both, yeah. Hopefully in the future, it will become easier to match up crashes that are seen in one and the other. Right now, you'll see a lot of crashes in both places. I know that on the back end and also within Studio, we've been thinking a lot about how to sort of combine that information to make it more useful.
Do I just get two gutter icons, one from each?
No.
Okay, all right.
There's just one, but the pop-up will have information from both.
Okay. Cool. All right. So you're leading the sort of Firebase integration team on the Studio side. And so there's the Crashlytics and Play Vitals, and there's also now device streaming we're working on. And so, that you're talking to, what exactly is the back end?
So the back end, I guess, has two main parts. One is Firebase Test Lab, which I think users might be familiar with because that's a service that we expose and many people use. Behind Firebase Test Lab is what we call OmniLab. And that's why Greg is here.
All right, Greg. So what is OmniLab?
So OmniLab is sort of the back end to the Firebase Test Lab team. So we have generally the Firebase Test Lab, which is the third-party centric test lab where any external developer can run integration tests or CI tests.
It's not just external developers. We use it for Jetpack, for Android X.
Yeah, we use it for Jetpack. I think if you use the Play pre-launch report, you also get Firebase Test Lab integration for free. OmniLab is sort of the Google internal lab that we use for ourselves. It's the same devices and the same phones, but at least for all of Google's testing and CI needs. So Gmail doesn't necessarily run through Firebase Test Lab. They run through OmniLab. It's the same devices, generally the same use cases.
I see. So the Firebase Test Lab is like a front end meant for talking via the external Firebase API and Studio API.
It's got all the Google Cloud integrations and Firebase integrations. But if you're working at Google, you don't always have a cloud project. So.
Right. So you can run your tests, and now you can also stream a device. Is that correct? Tell me more.
Yeah. So this is the new exciting thing. In the past, the Firebase Test Lab integration in Studio and just in general has been something for non-interactively batch running a bunch of tests on a bunch of devices. So the new thing that we're working on now, and this is something that we mentioned briefly at Google I/O this year, but haven't made a huge deal about so far, is direct access to those devices streaming through Studio, where you can interact with one of these devices that's in OmniLab directly in Studio as if it were a device connected locally or plugged in locally to your computer.
Also, it's streaming both ways.
Yeah. So I think about a year ago we previewed. I think it just went stable, like in Giraffe or is going stable in Hedgehog, but local device streaming. So if you plug in your phone, the whole UI will be streamed in exactly the same place you normally see the embedded emulator, right? So you don't have to take your eyes off the IDE, because why would you ever do that? And you can use your mouse as opposed to picking your phone out of your pocket and dealing with it. And I guess now the device no longer has to be in your pocket.
Right. So it should, from a user point of view, it should be just the same as plugging your phone into your computer. You get an ADB connection. You see it in the running devices window in Studio. You can poke at it, install your apps, whatever. Except you don't have to pay for. You don't have to go out and buy a device for every developer who wants one.
So if I get a particular type of, if I look at my Crashlytics window, wow, I'm tying it back.
Good job, Tor.
Podcast professionals. So if I have a crash in Crashlytics and I'm seeing, it's crashing on this particular device configuration, now I should be able to go and see, hey, does OmniLab have this device, and can I actually debug it, because it doesn't seem to happen on my daily driver.
Yes, yeah. So that's exactly the idea. Right now we're focusing on Pixel devices, so Pixel tablet, Pixel Fold, devices that are more unusual and you might not be willing to shell out the big bucks for.
Right. It's something Google really wants. Like, please make sure your app works well on a tablet. Please make sure
I have a question about the Pixel Fold. If I need to open the foldable, does that mean that Tor runs to the data center and opens it for me?
Greg does it.
Yeah.
He's the one who said OmniLab, right?
No, they actually have little robots in there that open and close. No, there's
so much easier.
There is some support in the platform for
to emulate.
Ooh, tell us more.
Emulate that.
How does that work?
So as far as folding devices, Joe would actually know more about that. So the Android platform does have features, some developer features that you can set, like what orientation the device is pretending to be, and that flows up through the Android framework, tells it how large to draw on the screen, what cameras should be enabled or disabled.
But do you have an actual Pixel Fold, or is there a different hardware that's simulating all of this?
It's an actual Pixel Fold.
So the Pixel Fold is being told via Magic, you are now unfolded, and then the OS will just basically do the same thing as if the sensor had actually been saying, you're unfolded now. Is that correct?
There's a command, I think it's called the device state command, that actually configures all of these things through ADB, which is ultimately how this whole service works. So you do get like a full ADB connection to these real physical devices, with kind of all the implications thereof. So you can change the orientation, you can simulate a fold or unfold, different pose changes, any instrumentations or debug stuff that you want to do to the phone.
Yeah, and this is all just the same as what you get if you were to have a Pixel Fold of your own and plug it into your machine. And then in the running device window in Studio, you could, without touching your device, fold it.
So it's running the same OS code. So you're not like going to have some weird bugs because it's the same. Okay, that's pretty good.
I mean, really the goal is to be as close to real life as possible. What you actually have if you had your device plugged in.
That sounds amazing, because a lot of the code I've written for Android was related to the GPU. So the emulator is great, but in the end, I really need to run stuff on the device, and the differences between the different devices, the different GPUs, the different drivers. You end up. I remember Matthias working on Firmat, he had a drawer full of different devices from different manufacturers. So yeah, having that is amazing.
It's interesting. When we first started implementing this, like the first time I saw a device on the screen, the first thought was like, let's see what the performance is like. And we opened up YouTube and it worked fine.
Amazing.
It looked perfectly good. So if you are doing, you wouldn't expect like the best latency ever, obviously, because it is going over the network. But it definitely, from my non-Android developer perspective, seems like the performance is just what you would want there.
My only concern, and that's a very, very niche concern as a graphics programmer, like the fact that we're streaming a video stream is like, what does it do to the colors? If I'm working on things like color management, I would probably still do that locally because...
Well, I mean, it's kind of, when we have the team meetings, right? And someone's demoing their new feature. And you're sitting next to them in the room and you can see the beautiful animation and you see what's being projected on the video chat. You're like, oh, the frame rate is just not doing this justice.
I remember for Android 3.0 when I went in front of the entire Android team to demo the new hardware accelerated UI. And we had this overhead, camera to record like the device. And it was only doing like 20 frames per second. And so I had to tell everyone, trust me, it's smooth and it's fast. Like you can't see it, but come see the device.
Yeah, you have to do slow-mo.
Yeah, at least you don't have that issue with the device streaming.
Yeah.
Do you know anything about the latency? Like, do we have measurements of?
So latency varies, especially like where you sit. So we've found that where the device is relative to where you're actually coding from does matter. So
so the Google Bus Wi-Fi probably not the best.
The Google Bus Wi-Fi is not the best. Some of the, like if we're on our home networks, generally that's dominated by like what we see at home.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we're definitely targeting like very little additional latency from the actual Google networks.
But it's also not easy to solve, right? Because it's not like YouTube where you have CDNs all over the world to cache the data. Here we're talking about physical devices. So if you're on the other side of the world from that physical device, speed of light and all that. I
mean, we've seen that it's for at least for a while it was better to plug in your phone than to use ADB Wi-Fi. And it was better to have a more modern USB cable than an older one, just for pushing your 200
it's
megabyte
a lot of
APK.
pixels,
Yeah. I was talking about actually deployment, so, and I'm assuming that here I'm building on my machine, right?
Yeah.
There's no magic where my source code is uploaded to that remote device. So I'm building on my machine and then I'm pushing my app. So there's a lot of bits being pushed through the pipe.
Yeah, I think there's some opportunities for potential optimization there in the future if you can upload things in a smarter way.
Well, don't we have a...
We do.
I want to say, I want to say the word delta push. I keep hearing our deployment team talking about delta push, right? But like, there's some kind of smarts, right, in incremental build. So the first time push can't be helped. But when I'm doing an incremental build, it should be.
Yeah, sure. So I guess I'm talking more about specific opportunities because we are running the service. We have the device there. Maybe we could do something extra.
Yeah.
But you definitely will get all of the optimizations you get when deploying locally, including pushing deltas.
Okay.
So yeah, the first time, especially if you have a large app, it might take a little bit to deploy, but subsequent pushes should be faster.
What about the debugging experience? I know that like with debugging, the protocols are very verbose and latency matters a lot. Debugging on Android is a lot slower than the experience we have when we're debugging Android Studio when it's all local, right? So I assume that introduces a number of challenges.
That was one of the biggest challenges that we had initially.
Plus, isn't it like a big use case here?
Yeah.
Right. I need to be on this particular device because I want to debug and see what is happening.
Yeah. So as you said, like the debugging protocol has a lot of round trips. We introduce round trip latency. It makes it slower. So there's been a lot of work within the team to optimize that protocol. Recently, there's a new feature has come online within Studio to do a lot of prefetching, a lot of parallelization, and the performance we have now isn't as good as what you get locally, but it's not multiple seconds per frame or watch point like it used to be.
Yeah. On the server side, there's definitely some parts of the stack that we could optimize. So we have not only just our front end server, but we have a couple layers of backends, and we're thinking about ways to just drop those completely. Because after all, the fastest code is no code. So if there's ways that we can like optimize this, I think we have a overall like end goal that this should be negligible slowdown over local testing. We're definitely going to look into that. We haven't done a whole lot of speed passes. We're building the feature at the moment. So
Yeah, can you say a bit more about where we are in development of this? Can I download Iguana and use it right now?
So right now you can we have a sign up form. I probably should like know the URL. Maybe like in the video you could like see the URL there or something. I don't know.
Our listeners are extremely intelligent.
Yeah,
they'll figure it out.
I hear there's a way to search for things on the internet.
Yes.
But yeah, so we're have a limited set of users now trying it out. You can sign up to be one of them. We're trying to get more people who will provide us feedback. Iguana, I would say it's completely usable now. There's some features missing that we want to add. Since we've had only a small number of users so far, we haven't focused on a lot of the issues that will arise once we have any kind of contention for devices. Since they are physical devices in a room, there's only so many of them. And if we have, suddenly have 1,000 times as many users, there will be contention for those devices. We hope to make the user experience for that okay, but we haven't worked on it yet.
So I'm curious, how does it work in Studio itself? Do I create a device like I create a virtual device, except it's a remote one, or what's the UI for this?
So the actual UI...
Do I choose the type of device I want?
Yeah, it's a little bit in flux now because the number of devices that we have available is changing. There's some other UI designs within Studio that will impact how we want to do this. So far, we've had a small enough number of devices and a small enough number of users that we just show all the available devices in Device Manager without you having to do anything other than select your cloud project and be logged into Studio.
Wait, so I open up Device Manager and there's some sort of like remote list somewhere and I can just go like, oh yeah, I want that one. Click, run.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so just in Iguana, all your virtual and physical devices show up together in a single list, and also all of your cloud devices if you have that enabled.
And to be clear, it won't show up for people until they've found the URL and they've been sort of allow listed.
Yeah, you have to be signed up.
Yeah, okay.
In the future, there'll be some other flow whereby you can pick which devices you want to show there, and then have them show if you're interested.
Yeah, so we'll have probably like a little traffic signal with how contentious the devices are at the moment. So if you know that there's going to be a wait, you can probably find some other device, like if maybe if a Pixel Fold has too many users and a Pixel 7 has actual code that you need to reproduce, users can flow from one to the other. One of the other things is we do have sort of a queuing system in Firebase Test Lab where the first users in, or I guess it's round robin by project. So if Joe queues 1,000 tests and I queue 10, then, our first 10 tests all run together. But currently direct access or Android device streaming powered by Firebase Test Lab.
Nicely done.
Currently, those users are sort of hopping the queue. So we know that there's a live user on the other end of the connection, so they get their first pick of devices.
That makes sense. Do we know yet? I mean, Firebase Test Lab was a paid product, right? Do we know? I'm not asking like pricing details, but like, is this going to be a paid product, or is there going to be like a freemium model, or has anything been decided about that?
We're definitely going to have some payment. We found that if we don't have payment, then users tend to, act poorly sometimes.
It's a free device.
Yeah, it's a free device. So there's definitely some yeah.
Don't give
Anyway.
them any ideas.
I'll
sure
try
they
not
will
to
have
give
the
people
ideas.
any ideas, but you can imagine what you can do with a free device. So yeah, we do want some payment. There is questions about how much and how much free quota users will get and for how long. But we're very likely going to follow the same model as Firebase Test Lab overall.
To be clear, for now, when during the initial research phase, it's free. So sign up now, get it while you
Yeah,
can.
it's the same as model as StudioBot. We don't know what the plan is long term, but at least if you use it during Canary, it's free. So it's a good resource. Anything else on direct access? What's the feedback been like so far?
We haven't had too much we haven't had that many users yet. The feedback, I would say, has been maybe we have some work to do around getting the UI completely smooth, which is what we expect for the first few users. I think there's a lot of enthusiasm. I think that there's a lot of, people looking at what the possibilities will be for this in the future. In order for it to really be useful, people have to integrate it into their daily development flows, bug fixing flows, etc. When you're just sort of trying it out very initially, poking at it, using preview versions of Studio, I think that it might be a little bit hard to see how useful it will be in the future. But
yeah, I guess the killer use case is when you have this crash that is unique to a device that you don't have. And so if the AQI window can say, oh, actually, this is available, click here to run, with direct access, or what did you say? Okay, help me say the phrase.
Android device streaming powered by Firebase Test Lab.
Yeah, I think that was
Nice.
it. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So if we had that long label in the button, like run with that could basically be the thing where you're like, oh yeah, this is exactly what I need. I don't even have to go and find the device in your list. Like we just did that step for you.
Sure. I mean, crash reproduction is definitely one thing, but I think maybe even more interesting, and you can see this in the, our enthusiasm for this idea in the devices that we have available in the initial preview. But for developing for other form factors, tablet, foldable.
Oh yeah, making sure this looks good on the upcoming devices or the ones that are still in limited availability. Or
yeah, and if you can do that development, you can try it out without having to shell out for the devices. I think that there's a lot of opportunity there for better support for those other form factors.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and there's been a pretty long tail of devices that developers have been asking for. Like whenever users are trying to grab some maybe lower spec devices as well as some of the flagship devices. And there tends to be quite a few different models. So Firebase Test Lab has, I think, oh man, I don't want to get the number wrong because I'm the Firebase Test Lab guy. We have about 50 different device models that we could use this on. Currently, we have a fairly restricted set of 3 or 4.
For streaming, yeah.
For the purpose of streaming. But
is that because you have to change, like, can I just donate to you a bunch of old devices I have and you would just like plug them in and now you have like much wider variety of devices? Or like, no, it has to have at least this API level and we have to go in and we have to like enable this thing in the kernel? Like, are there new challenges about taking one of these devices and making them available and properly sandboxed and all those things to run in your cloud?
So the devices are already pretty much sandboxed. So if we have that device model, we know how to clean any user data submitted to it. We know how to factory reset the device, flash all the partitions.
This just reminds me of a funny story, and I think this was a screenshot from Joe actually. When they first got the feature working, and I think someone was streaming a device, and they decided to like turn on the camera, and in the camera view, they could see the device that was sitting next to it in the rack, and the screen was on, and you could actually see what was happening. So I'm assuming at this point, part of your process is to put like paper in between each device or something.
Yeah, we put tape over it, and I think the initial version of that might have been in our staging environment.
Yeah.
We're a little bit looser with.
No, I'm sure it's proper, but it was just I was like, oh, that's interesting.
Currently, we do have pixel folds in like camera boxes. So if you grab it, you can see a little color target and see all the different all the different setups, but most of our production devices have things like taped over cameras, so that you don't see other devices in the rack. It wouldn't be very interesting if you could anyway.
Right.
But I don't know, where was I?
I was asking about OS modifications, right? And it sounds like there's nothing you have to do. It's basically all done at the hardware integration level.
Yeah, it's well, not necessarily in the hardware integration level. So we do have ways of flashing partitions. So like we will go through fastboot, clear any of the partitions that we can. For devices that we don't have fastboot on, we have other ways of doing things.
So like if I'm launching a device, is that guaranteed to be sort of cleaned from anyone else using it prior?
Yeah. There's nothing left after you're done with the device. So that is one kind of concern that we've had with some developers, where maybe if you're done using a device, you kind of want an image of that so that if you need to continue after 3 hours or whatever.
Is there a timeout? Like if I'm using this device and then, I have a meeting for 45 minutes and I have to interrupt my debugging session because I didn't finish. Is there a way to suspend, or do I just like keep the meter running, so to speak? Is that the model, by the way? Is it like a per minute charge, like an old taxi?
Yeah, it's basically a per minute charge, at least for Firebase Test Lab. And that might be the direction we go in the future.
So I can basically say, okay, I'm willing to have this continue because I want the state.
Yeah. So there might be ways that we can get like a snapshot of the currently running device so that you don't have the meter running.
Might be useful overnight.
Yeah.
That's definitely something that we've talked about. It's not something that there is support for now, but like we understand that that's, would be very useful for users to be able to snapshot, maybe, restore a snapshot, the same snapshot multiple times, similar to what we have for emulator. You take a snapshot at the point that you're interested in looking at and then go forward from there multiple times.
Interesting.
Yep. As far as like installing new devices, I don't know. That has mostly been a limitation of us like being able to test it and make sure that it might work suitably well for EAP customers. I don't think there is a whole lot of reason why we can't have more technically, but we could. I think it's just developer bandwidth at this point.
Yeah, I know back in the day when we worked on Instant Run, we got all kinds of random bug reports because Instant Run did all kinds of hacks because it was working on old API levels. So it was running certain ADB commands, and we discovered the hard way that device manufacturers, especially the long tail of them, they do all kinds of weird things, to like remove stuff they didn't think was necessary and so on. And so we bought all kinds of random devices. Probably doesn't affect app developers as much as something like Instant Run running ADB commands and assuming that they'll have all the commands needed. But I imagine that could be another use case here, not just supporting new classes of devices, which I get why that's important, but also the, availability, especially of older API levels. Because if you say my app supports API level 21 and there's, it's not so easy to go out and buy one of those today.
Yeah. Right now for streaming, both for physical device streaming locally and for this, I think it's API 26 is the minimum. But the various random device issue is something that it would be interesting to be able to support in the future, given availability.
Of course, my 21 thing is probably, that's the nice thing about these things. In Android, when we hear about that's going to require API level 34, that'll never be relevant. But, 5 years come and go, and then suddenly everyone has it. Where are we with API levels now, Romain, sort of from app developers?
In terms of?
Well, your team probably supports like the widest possible, right? So, and what is your minimum?
I think a good indicator is what we do for Compose, where we'll target API 21 and up, which gives us like very good coverage.
That's almost all of them at this point, I think. So you're basically...
Not all of them, but...
No, but I'm sure you probably have Android X libraries that are not going all the way to 21.
You mean that go further back?
No, that are like 24 and up or 26 and up.
I don't think so, no.
Oh, interesting.
No.
Huh.
No, Android X is pretty good at going as far back as possible. And it's the whole point of Android X.
Yeah, because you're a library and you don't want to force the app ecosystem. But
talking to app developers, like, they target higher
Yeah, I think Marshmallow at least is pretty common. 23. Yeah. 26 for device streaming is probably. Is that what you said? Did you say 26?
Yeah, I believe that.
That seems like it's going to cover a lot, honestly. Yeah. What did we forget to ask about? Was there anything else outside of these features in sort of your studio services quality integration areas? It's going to be one of those things where after, like, you forgot one of your kids. Oh, no.
You can always have another episode.
There's going to be some engineer on Joe's team who's like, my big project, how could you not mention it?
No, I can't think of anything.
Well, it's already a lot. So, you know, I think you have your hands full.
Talk more about Firebase Test Lab as well, if we really want.
Yeah, what is going on with FTL these days?
So we have a few new initiatives. So I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about that here, but we have iOS Robo, which is a new feature. So if you're a Android developer, you likely work on iOS apps as well. A lot of teams have like just a general mobile team, and there's a lot of cross-platform support.
Yeah, my impression is that Firebase in general has some solutions that are meant for doing your business logic across both Android and iOS.
Yep. And so Firebase Test Lab has supported iOS testing for a while. And one of the initiatives for our team is robo testing, which is an app crawler framework. So it discovers crashes and accessibility issues on your apps.
Is that the one? You mentioned this earlier. Is this the one that runs in the Play pre-launch reports?
It is. So if you submit an app through Google Play, you already use Robo for the most part.
Because I tried this, and some of those, you know, it would be nice to try locally. And so I guess, is this a way, is this only available remotely, or is this something I can also run?
At the moment, you have to run through Firebase Test Lab in order to get robo tests. Okay. So you can run instrumentation tests for your CI system through GitHub or whatever. And with Robo, you can also run like these app crawls. We have that for iOS now. So you can do the same thing for your iOS tests, instrumentation tests, and all sorts of other things.
Go ahead.
I was going to say on the studio side for Firebase Test Lab integration, the new thing, and I don't remember what version it's in or if it's out yet or what exactly, but being able to define Firebase Test Lab devices to run on in your Gradle configuration for running tests automatically.
So this is the Gradle managed virtual devices.
Great. This is Gradle managed Firebase Test Lab devices.
Oh yes, not virtual, obviously.
Right.
Yes.
So there is GMD Gradle managed devices, where you define a virtual device configuration you want to run in your Gradle files. This is the same thing except for Firebase Test Lab devices. So you can run on physical devices, or I guess probably Firebase Test Lab virtual devices, in your CI, whatever, powered by Gradle.
A lot of stuff. When is, I know, I already know the answer to when is, and that is, we don't talk about future deadlines, but is there some sense of when the device streaming is going to be more widely available and not have this, you know, application to be allowed in?
When it's ready.
Yeah, I saw that. I should have seen that coming. Yeah.
I mean, when it's ready is a good answer. Like soon, hopefully. I don't know.
Okay.
Not going to comment.
Tor, you know we don't talk about the future.
I know. This is rookie mistake. Actually, there was one thing, for the podcast we've been talking about, and that is to maybe start doing a Q&A. So if you have any questions about this episode, send them in. Put a comment. We now are also on YouTube. This used to be an audio-only podcast. The last 4 or 5 episodes or so, we've been on 4 or 5, something like that.
Yeah, we'll try to be good and answer the questions in the next episodes, I suppose.
Exactly. So if you have any questions on this, please submit them there or elsewhere. But that's a good place. We'll go looking for them there, and then we'll try to, in each subsequent episode, we'll try to answer.
You should have an 800 number like the virtual.
Yeah, or maybe is 900 when we can actually get paid? That would be even better. Yeah. Okay. I think that's it for today. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks.